In the United Kingdom, there was a study that found 86% of their population consumes meat. Currently, there are 67.61 people living in the United Kingdom. That means 58.14 million people consume meat on a daily basis. That's a lot of meat. As we all are aware, meat comes from animals. There are multiple types of meat depending on the animal, and depending on the meat depends on how it affects your body. Some are worse for you than others. Red meat, which is beef that comes from cattle, pork that comes from pig and hogs, veal that comes from calves, lamb, goat, bison, elk, and deer. Then there's white meat that comes from turkey, chicken, ducks, geese, quail, and pheasant. Then lastly, there's processed meat, such as hot dogs, sausage, bacon, bologna, salami, pastrami, and jerky. Many people have an idea of where their meat is coming from, but do they really know? Are they aware of the effects too much meat consumption has on their body? What about the effects meat has on the environment? First, I want to start off by clarifying some things. Not all meat is bad for you, and nor am I here to tell you to cut all meat out from your diet. I'm here to inform you and tell you about the many downsides to consuming too much meat, and persuade you to lower your consumption. Cove Creek Farm stated in 2018, the average American ate 222 pounds of meat, or 0.6 pounds per day. So we can say that the average family of 4 consumes about 888 pounds of meat in a year. To capture a wider range, we can say it's somewhere between 700 and 1,000 pounds of meat. Looking at those numbers and then considering the amount of American citizens, that's a lot of meat consumption. Different meats can give you various amount of protein, and it's very important to get your protein, but meat is not the only solution. Red meat can be good for you, but to consume too much can increase your risk of different cancers and heart disease. It is recommended people who consume more than 90 grams of red meat or processed meat should cut down 70 grams or less to reduce your risk of cancer. Next, I want to talk to you about how important it is for your meat to be cooked properly. If meat is not cooked properly, there are bacteria and viruses that can cause food poisoning. If the harmful bacteria on the meat is not killed before consumption, it can cause people to get very sick. When meat is either barbecued, grilled, or smoked at high temperatures, fat is released and drips down onto the surface. This can produce toxic compounds called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PHA for short, which can seep into the meat. PHAs are carcinogenic, meaning they can cause cancer. Processed meat can increase the risk of heart disease. A quote from Francesca Spritzler stated, in 2010, researchers performed a massive review of 20 studies, including over 1.2 million people. They found consuming processed meat appeared to increase heart disease by 42%. There have also been multiple studies that have looked at the relationships between processed meat and red meat and type 2 diabetes. A review of 3 studies found that consuming more than a half of serving of red meat daily increased the risk of developing diabetes within 4 years by 30% in relation to weight gain. Now I want to discuss the negative effects consuming meat has on the environment. Most animals are raised in factory farms and treated very poorly before being slaughtered and made into meat that individuals consume. These farms do not take care of these animals, and most barely have room to even move around, because of how crowded the farm can be. They don't get access to sunlight, they barely get fed, they don't get any water. They're basically tortured animals. To prevent infection, farmers will inject their livestock with antibiotics, steroid hormones such as estrogen, proestrogen, and testosterone. They get injected into the animals to speed up their growth. This also raises more health and ethical concerns. Factory farms are major contributors to water and air pollution and deforestation. Factory farm animals produce more than 1 million tons of manure every day. Land and rainforests are cleared in order to raise livestock. If land is used to raise animals instead of crops, the land loses its water and soil. Trees are cut down, and the untreated animal waste pollutes rivers and streams, killing many of animals in the water. Union of Concerned Scientists list meat eating as one of the biggest environmental hazards facing the earth today. Here are a list of facts pulled from PETA.org that will shock you. Raising animals for consumes more than half of all water used in the United States. It takes to make 2,500 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of meat. Producing just one hamburger uses enough fossil fuel to drive a small car 20 miles. A typical pig factory generates the same amount of raw waste as a city of 12,000 people. As you can tell, meat consumption has many poor effects on not only people, but the environment. Let me tell you some ways that you could help. Instead of eating meat, there are plenty of foods that you can replace your protein intake. Tofu, quinoa, mushroom, lentils, chickpeas, and most beans. There are also vegetables such as asparagus, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, collards, corn, potatoes, peppers, spinach, sweet potatoes, and turnip greens. I could keep going. They are very high in protein, and you can consume those instead of meat, and they're better for you. There are many diets that can minimize your meat consumption. Some different types of diets are vegan, which are people who eat nothing that comes from animals at all. Then there's vegetarians, who are somewhat like vegan, but if they decide to, some will eat milk or eggs. And then there's pescatarian, which are people who eat fish, eggs, and milk, no other meat but meat from waters, and most plants. I personally have been a pescatarian for the past 4 years, and I have loved the way that my body feels. I love the way that I feel. I truly think it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. Another form of diets is flexitarians, which sometimes consume meat but don't make it part of their daily intake. Like, they don't need to have a meal with meat in it. And then there are plant-based diets, which basically means their diet is plant-based. And some, if they want to, consume meat, but most of it is plant-based. Eating less meat helps you reduce your risk of heart disease, stroke, obesity, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, and many cancers. It can also allow you to have healthy weight management. Making the switch to eat less meat can not only benefit you in many ways, but also the environment. You are helping nourish your body as well as our planet. Be aware of all the effects that come with certain foods that you decide to consume. Lower your intake of meat and find your alternatives. Help yourself and help the environment.